All right. Good afternoon and happy United Nations Day to everyone. The Secretary General has just landed in Bangui in the Central African Republic. He will be at the UN mission base shortly to lay a wreath for fallen peacekeepers. He will then celebrate UN Day with UN staff. And on the Central African Republic, our humanitarian colleagues say that insecurity and access constraints continue to prevent the transferring of goods and humanitarian aid to respond to the needs of 18,000 besieged people in Bombolo, where widespread violence led to civilian deaths last week. An additional 3,000 displaced people in the village of Dimbi also remain inaccessible. Humanitarian workers are making every effort to send a convoy with assistance this week. Like I said, today is United Nations Day, which marks the anniversary of the entry into force in 1945 of the UN Charter. In his message, the Secretary General said that our world faces many grave challenges, but we have the tools to overcome them. The world's problems transcend borders. We have to transcend our differences to transform our future. When we achieve human rights and human dignity for all people, they will build a peaceful, sustainable, and just world. On United Nations Day, let us, we the peoples, make this vision a reality, he said. Here at UN headquarters, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, spoke at a commemoration ceremony and thanked staff for their commitment. She told the audience that she is hopeful because despite obstacles and limitations, the men and women of the UN get up each and every day to inch our world closer to peace and justice and dignity for all. Also on the occasion of UN Day, the Secretary General's Special Representative for Iraq expressed his confidence that the government of Iraq and the Kurdistan Regional Government, just as they banded together to defeat Daesh, can work to overcome their differences through dialogue. Jan Kubish said that recent developments have sadly triggered confrontation, adding another layer of insecurity, fragmentation, and difficulties, bringing about new waves of displacements, mostly of Kurds. He noted that the United Nations is closely monitoring the situation while providing humanitarian aid to those in need and raising issues of violations of human rights as warranted, guided by the principle of impartiality and with the interests of the people of Iraq, including in the Kurdistan region, at heart. The Special Representative offered the good offices of the United Nations Assistance Mission for Iraq to facilitate discussions if asked by both sides. You can read more on this online. The Security Council failed to pass a resolution concerning the mandate of the Joint Investigative Mechanism dealing with Syria, owing to a veto from the Russian Federation. The draft resolution had 11 votes in favor, 2 votes against, and 2 abstentions. The Council is to hold consultations on Lebanon following the meeting that just ended. Our humanitarian colleagues in Syria are concerned for the safety and protection of civilians at risk of death and injury from unexploded ordnance reportedly planted through RAQQA City's neighborhoods. While the clearing of unexploded ordnance operation is ongoing, 9 people were reportedly killed during the weekend while trying to return to their homes. Humanitarian workers have been unable to access the city until the clearing of mines and other unexploded ordnance is completed. The UN calls on all parties to take all measures to protect civilians and to facilitate safe, unimpeded, and sustained access to all people in need across the country. The UN Refugee Agency is increasingly concerned by escalating displacement in several key regions of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Since 2015, the number of people displaced internally has more than doubled and now stands at 3.9 million, some 428,000 of these having been displaced in the past 3 months alone. With widespread militia activities and unrest and violence fueled by ethnic and political conflict affecting many areas, the risk of further displacement is high, while the challenges of getting aid to people in need are growing fast. In all, there are more than 620,000 refugees from the DRC in more than 11 African countries. At the same time, the number of refugees from neighboring countries seeking refuge inside the Democratic Republic of the Congo has grown by 1/3 since early 2016 and now stands at 526,000 people. More details on UNHCR's website. The UN Migration Agency and the UN Refugee Agency have helped some 134 Somali refugees return from Yemen to their home country. The IOM said that these Somalis came to Yemen searching for a better life and found themselves caught up in conflict and often subjected to abuse by smugglers. Among the group returning home are families who have been living in Kaire's refugee camp and others who had been living in the city of Aden. Prior to departure, IOM doctors ensured that all were fit for travel, and UNHCR provided them with a cash package to assist their reintegration once they arrive home. More information is available on the IOM website. IOM has distributed thousands of hygiene kits to Rohingya refugees who have fled Myanmar's Rakhine state to Bangladesh. The kits include soap, toothbrushes, water containers, and other items, and were funded by the UN Central Emergency Response Fund. IOM says that these supplies ensure that Rohingya families, particularly women and children, can meet their personal care and hygiene needs in the makeshift settlements in which they live. Yesterday afternoon, we received a copy of Nicaragua's Instrument of Accession to the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. We welcome Nicaragua's accession to the Paris Agreement, making it the 169th country to join the historic agreement to address climate change. By joining the agreement, Nicaragua has reinforced the universality of the agreement and the overwhelming desire by countries to address climate change. Besides UN Day, today is World Polio Day. In 1988, when the World Health Organization became part of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, polio paralyzed 10 children for life every 15 minutes in nearly every country in the world. In 2017 so far, 12 cases of polio have been reported in just 2 countries. Today, only 3 endemic countries remain, which have never stopped polio: Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Pakistan. Even within these countries, the virus is cornered into fewer districts than ever before. More on the fight against the disease can be found on WHO's website. And today is also World Development Information Day. The day highlights the potential of information and communication technologies to provide new solutions to development challenges, foster economic growth, and help eradicate poverty and promote social inclusion. More information is available online. And after I'm done, we'll hear from Brendan Varma, the spokesperson for the President of the General Assembly. Then tomorrow at 10:15 a.m., there will be a briefing here by David Kay, Special Rapporteur on the Promotion and Protection of the Right to Freedom of Opinion and Expression. And immediately after that, at 11 a.m., there will be a briefing by Asma Jahangir, Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And then at 2 p.m., there will be a briefing by Karima Benoun, Special Rapporteur in the field of cultural rights. That's it for me. Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Abedi.
Thank you, Farhan. As you mentioned, the Secretary General issued this message on UN Day. This message is contained in less than 1 page and does not mention at all the staff, which is not a traditional way of doing things. Is it because the Secretary General is away or some other reason?
Well, the Secretary General is also going to make remarks shortly to staff in the Central African Republic, and that is part of the commemoration of UN Day, and we'll distribute those to you. So beyond that, he and the Deputy Secretary General are both speaking at events, and so those are a part of the commemoration of the day. Yes?
Sure. I want to ask about the Secretary General's trip, both about CAR and something about Cameroon. I wanted to know, and looking back at the 111-page report on sexual abuse in the CAR that was found, there was one sort of untied up string was a staff member named Renner Onana, who was an aide to Babacar Guy, and at that time it was said that it was unclear if discipline was applied or what happened. Maybe, I don't know if you'll know, but if you can find out if the person is at the mission, and can we find out what, in particular, while he's there, the Secretary General who he's being briefed by, and whether he meets with victims of sexual abuse, the things that he talked about at the stakeout. But Mr. Renner Onana, if you don't have it now, if there's a way to know whatever happened with that case.
I believe that case was opened. I don't have an update on where that case stands, but I can check. Okay,
and thanks. And just, I learned yesterday, and maybe you'll confirm it or deny it, and it may just be a stopover, but some were saying that the Secretary General on the 27th of October will be in Cameroon for 2 hours in the evening, on an Air France flight that goes from Bangui to Yaoundé and then to Paris, and that the President, Paul Biya, might meet him at the airport. Can you, I didn't see it on the schedule, but there are various different sides of the issue speaking about it, and I wanted to know if you could confirm that, and also if the UN has done anything regarding the case of Nsako Basinji, who's a high-profile environmental and Anglophone activist who's been jailed since September 25th, and various groups have now spoken out, and I'm wondering, has the UN done anything to have this entirely nonviolent activist released?
Well, that's several questions.
Yes.
On the last of those, we have been raising our concerns about all detained activists, and we'll continue to do so. Regarding the Secretary General's travel plans, there's no other trip to announce at this point. If we have any further announcements down the line, we'll let you know. But for now, he will be in the Central African Republic through the 27th. And was there anything else?
I mean, the government of Cameroon seems to understand that he's flying on a flight that goes from Bangui to Yaoundé, but between 7 and 9 p.m. he'll be in the airport in Yaoundé, and the President Paul Biya may meet with him there. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, whenever the Secretary General is flying, there's sometimes different stopovers, but there's nothing to announce at present. If we have anything, we'll let you know at that point. Yes.
Thank you, Farhan. I remember a few, probably months ago, we asked for an explanation of the relations between IOM and UNHCR. We still don't know. It was announced that IOM now is part of the UN. Okay. But is it integration or coordination? How the relation is being settled out between both? Is it part of the UN system? Does the Secretary have the power to appoint the head of IOM? Or how it's going to be the relation, especially between IOM and UNHCR? Can we also repeat that we need to speak to a senior officer of IOM here in the briefing room?
Certainly, and if we get senior IOM officials here in New York, we'll try to provide them to you. In the meantime, IOM continues in the same status and doing the same work that it did before. It is now part of the United Nations system and has been since last year. Of course, IOM deals more broadly with the situation of migrants and cases of migration in general, whereas UNHCR, as you know, has a mandate specifically to deal with those who are refugees. Yes.
Farhan, about Iraq, UNHCR and the Humanitarian Coordination Office in Iraq, they both mentioned in their statement that the displacement of more than 100,000 people from Kirkuk area and the conflict areas between Kayarji and Baghdad is being preemptive. It's been a choice, but today Amnesty International says satellite images, videos, photos, dozens of testimony it collected by Amnesty International show that civilians were forced to flee. And while at least 11 civilians killed by indiscriminate attacks in one town, which is Turs Khurmatu. And I just wonder why the UN issued, and UNHCR issued a statement indicating that people left by choice. I mean, I know people left by choice, some of them, but not all of them.
There are many different reasons why people can be leaving. Some clearly have been leaving in advance of the fear of attacks, and that's what UNHCR was drawing attention to at the time. We have been worried about the possibility of clashes, and you will have seen, I think, the statement that was issued by the UN Assistance Mission for Iraq today, which indicates our concerns about that.
Mm-hmm. And about the increasing fight, as I mean, we are in the last 24 hours, there are renewed fight in new areas near the what's called the Green Line, which is 1991 Security Council resolution that had a no-fly zone in the area 36, and the fight now extended to that area, which is very close to the Kurdistan region borders, inside Kurdistan region borders. Any new statements from the secretariats?
Well, I would just refer you to the statement that was issued just in the past hours by the UN mission in Iraq, which, among other things, says that we intend to raise issues of violations of human rights as warranted, guided by the principle of impartiality and with the interests of the people of Iraq, including the Kurdistan region at heart. Yes, Mr. Badi.
Thank you, Farhan. Yesterday, the delegates, while addressing the Fourth Committee, and while commending the work of the DPI for the dissemination of information abroad, noticed that there was some degree of imbalance in the use of official languages, and they called for proper recruitment to correct the situation. Will that be done?
Yes, we continue to be in dialogue with the member states on this issue, but we are trying to expand our language facilities, and we are listening to what the recommendations are and intend to follow them. Yes.
This is also, I guess it follows up, or it's related, in my mind at least, to this IOM question of association between the UN and other entities. The reporting has continued on what they're calling Ocampo leaks, and Inner City Press has obtained some of the documents and published them, and they involve leaks of documents that were sent to the Secretary General or Vijay Nambiar at that time, 2011, that were sent seemingly inappropriately to Mr. Ocampo at the time he was at the ICC. And I wanted to know, number one, I'd asked before, I believe it was you and not Stefan, whether there is a memorandum of understanding between the UN's Office of Internal Oversight Services and the ICC. It's been requested several times by the member states of the ICC. There's a formal document reiterating the request in an MOU before, and I don't know. So is it possible to know if there is an MOU? And number two, is the UN, NOIOS, monitoring the documents, some of which are published and some of which are not, but some of which have now been published, as relates to the UN itself?
Well, regarding that, I know that you're aware of the fact that the International Criminal Court has its own oversight body, and that conducts oversight, the internal oversight of the International Criminal Court. So you'd need to deal with them on that. I don't have anything to say about any other investigative work by the Office of Internal Oversight Services.
Sure, but is it, I guess I'm just saying, because when they say reiterates its request, it must have been made before. Was an MOU ever formed between OIOS and the International Criminal Court? It's just a kind of a, I think they could just say if they have, if maybe it never was and there's a reason that it wasn't. But if there was, it seems like it should be public. I mean, that it exists. Whether the document would be public, I don't know. But if there's an agreement, because it's so often said that the ICC has no links to the UN, I just want to know whether this MOU was ever concluded.
I don't believe it was, but I can check.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Farhan, again about Iraq, the conflict is expanding, and it's a major challenge, as you know, for the Iraqi government and Kurdistan regional government, everybody in Iraq. But I will ask you the same question that I asked you last week, why the Secretary General still hasn't said a word in a statement or by himself about this major issue. Doesn't he think this is serious enough for him to speak up about it?
He has spoken out on the Kurdish issue, and we've had statements that were issued by the spokesman about this. Today, the statement was issued, like I said, just within the past couple of hours by Mr. Kubish and the UN mission in Iraq, and he is speaking on the ground for the Secretary General. Okay, one more.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. And it'll be really fast. One is, thanks for the statement, for the response on the Burundi-Tanzania situation. I just wanted to know, since there's a lot of interest there, whether people were in fact extradited legally or abducted, or whether it's true or not. Is the UN taking any steps to you said that if confirmed it would be troubling, to actually confirm or deny this situation?
Well, the point is, as I mentioned, we're aware of the concerns over the circumstances of these arrests that were reported on Saturday and extradition, and we're seeking further details. If the events are confirmed, we call on the concerned authorities to ensure that due process is followed and the rights of those individuals are respected. We also stress the need for transparency in this matter.
And one other thing, just before too many days goes by, there was I know he's a special rapporteur, so it's not part of the part of the UN as such. But Pablo de Grief, on transitional justice, spent a 2-week visit to Sri Lanka, and since the UN Secretariat and DPA have worked on it, basically said that the commitments to transitional justice and accountability have yet to be concluded with, and that it's going to lead to political problems. So I wondered, does the UN Secretariat see an ongoing need to follow up, given that I know Mr. Feltman's visited twice, the previous Secretary General visited. What's the response to this finding that things that were committed to have not in fact taken place, and the underlying need for prevention of conflict remain?
Well, we don't comment, as you pointed out, on the work of special rapporteurs, but beyond that, we've made our concerns known about the need, the regular need for follow-up by the Sri Lankan authorities to make sure that there is accountability, and we'll continue to do that. All right, have a good day. Brendan.